you, Robbie. It's my pleasure to introduce to the club Rick Schreiber, who is a CPA, a CGMA, a CBGA, an M and AP, whatever that is. But anyway, great speaker. Rick has over 25 years of public accounting experience. He's worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, BDO, and is currently with my firm, Alexander Thompson Arnold, and he's the National Advisory Practice Leader. Has experience in strategy, mergers and acquisitions, digital transformation, value creation. He is has 2 degrees from Indiana University, a BS in accounting and an MBA from Indiana University. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Rick Schreiber, and hold on to your seats, guys. It's going to be a ride. Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, all. Or maybe I don't know if it's good afternoon. I think we're on the same time zone. But I'm trying to get more light. It's so dark in my Marriott hotel room in Nashville. But all right. Thank you, Ron, Robbie, David, Jenny. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see, guys. Let's hope I can do this, right? Let's see. Share screen. I see it. All right. Bear with me. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Nothing like a suspense here. All right. Still figuring this out. What did I? All right. Multiple. One participant can share at a time. So Jenny, I assume you've given me access here. Let me see. Oh.
Can you see your screen options when you hit share screen?
I can, but none of the, let me just pick one right now.
There we go. Okay.
But all right, so can you see my computer screen now?
Yes, we can see the PDF.
Do you see this Unleash Hidden Value?
No, we see the Tennessee CFO Roundtable and Poker Club.
Yeah,
document.
I selected that because that's not what I want to share. It didn't share my PowerPoint. Oh, there's my PowerPoint. I'm not a Zoom expert at now. Do you see a PowerPoint?
Yes, now we can.
Beautiful. All right, guys, I'm sorry for the technology. All right, slideshow. All right, buckle up, as Ron said. This is a quick, I'm gonna go very fast, and I'll try to keep it high level. I understand I have maybe 30 minutes, and I have an appointment I gotta run to shortly right after that. So I'm assuming you all see my screen, right? Jenny, yeah, that's fair to say? So.
Looks good.
All right, yeah, I'm trying to hide. Sure, there's a way where I can hide. I see my picture and other, I can just minimize right there. Boom. All right, now on with the show, as they say. All right, so I have 3 TED Talks here. You've all probably heard of the TED Talks, and they're just kind of snackables, easy to digest. And we're gonna probably get through maybe 2 of these, okay? We're gonna talk about digital. How do companies, governments, agencies, nonprofits create value, right, through digital means, digital transformation. And then I'm gonna talk about a next thing called the 4DX, 4 disciplines of execution, and how to make sure strategies don't die in the vine. And there's a kind of a science behind that. And then I doubt if we'll get to TED Talk number 3, which is all about lean, which is all about identifying waste and eliminating waste out of any department, any company, right, of any size or shape or any industry. So let's talk about digital. You probably have all heard about digital transformation, and it's a headline, kind of in the headlines of news daily, and it's also on the topics of board of directors. It's a lot of strategies related to digital transformations, and we're going to talk high level what it means. We're going to skip this definition because we'll kind of get the gist of it. But what I think is neat, like why now? Why are digital transformation, by the way, is what used to be called business transformation, right? And it's much more than just about adopting digital technologies, but why is digital transformation the hot buzz now? And why has it been such a big to-do over the past 5 years? And there's 4 big forces driving it. If you look at Wi-Fi, you used to only be able to get Wi-Fi connectivity, at a Starbucks 10 years ago when you had to buy some coffee and pay for it or something. Well, now Wi-Fi is pretty much like oxygen, right? It's pennies on the dollar, and you pretty much get Wi-Fi anywhere these days. So that is one driver, one force, one catalyst for digital transformation, why we're talking about it. The other are sensors. If you look kind of the top there, you see sensors. If any of you have a Fitbit, my wife has a Fitbit, it has all these tiny sensors in it. Hang on, all right, my thermostat just kicked it. And they are these little tiny sensors that go in Fitbits and collects data, and they're Wi-Fi enabled, and they're in your smartphones, they're in your cars, they're everywhere. Well, sensors, call it 10 years ago, used to be pretty big, unsophisticated, and pretty darn expensive. Nowadays, kind of like Wi-Fi, sensors are dirt cheap. These tiny, tiny little ant-sized, there's a picture of one there. They get embedded anywhere, and they collect data that if you have your heartbeats or your steps or your smartphone, whatever, or your car motion sensor, it collects all this data and sends it through the Wi-Fi to the cloud. So the cloud down at the very bottom there is everything, all companies are going to their cloud, right? All their IT systems, right? All their data room is going to the cloud. Again, cloud storage is pretty cheap now, and it's unlimited. So you've got that's as a third force. And the next force is data analytics. You have all this data now being collected from cars, from Fitbits, from your phone. What do you do with all this big data now, right? That we didn't have before. And then this new avalanche of data analytics and how to kind of monetize data. So those, I just wanted you to know, these are the 4 forces that why are we talking about digital transformation now? It's because of those 4 forces. And there's a whole bunch of stuff here we're not going to get time to, but whether it's video, think of social media, you think YouTube, you think of artificial intelligence, like Alexis, if you have those at home, and then augmented reality, robotics, mobile, 3D printing. There's a lot here. We don't have time to unpack it. So I am just going to fast forward. So these, let's just skip those. So we, my friends, are in what's called the 4th Industrial Revolution. The first Industrial Revolution was in the late 1700s, early 1800s, where was the advent of power and steam, the textile mills, right? And it created all this economic development, kind of Industrial Revolution is great prosperity, great productivity, and economic development. And then in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we had the advent of electricity, assembly lines, mass production. Think of Henry Ford, right? That caused another big boom in the kind of wave of economic development known as the Second Industrial Revolution. Then we had the third one in like the 1970s through the next couple decades. Think of Microsoft, Bill Gates, the advent of computers. There were really big computers and big networks and all that, but that created a new revelation. And now that we are embarking, they say, right? All these smart people say, we are in the 4th Industrial Revolution, which is all this digital transformation because of Wi-Fi, right? Because of sensors, because of the cloud, and because of data, big data, data analytics. So these are just, this is something, just an example of a headline news I grabbed a couple months ago. And it says digital transformation is a $1 trillion opportunity just in the next 4 years. That's how big this is. Every company, every industry is looking to get more digital, to get more automated, right? And enhance the customer experience. What I'm going to talk through really quickly is a BDO piece of thought leadership, a survey they did on digital transformation in the middle market. And there's 4 compelling business drivers or value drivers that are, again, creating this 4th Industrial Revolution, creating digital transformation. And one, talk
Would you like my car to go to work?
increasing operational efficiencies,
Oh,
both
okay, all right.
resilience and improving.
Exactly. It's a business car, so if you need something like that, don't hesitate to ask. Okay.
Was that a question for me? Sorry. What happened?
Mr. Bruce, husbands are not always a sorry lot, just most of the time. Okay, bye.
All right. So let me kind of keep track of time here too, guys. So one thing which is probably pretty evident with even business transformation, but even with digital transformation, is increasing operational efficiencies, right? Companies want to reduce cost, they want to accelerate speed, and they want to improve quality, right? These are the promises, some of the promises that digital transformation offers, okay? And of this survey, I think there was 200 or 300 executives that they interviewed, and about 58% of them said improving operational efficiencies was one of the drivers to adopt digital transformation. This next one is all about kind of being resilient, kind of pivoting your business model and being aware of like the risk of digital technology like cybersecurity, right? How to improve and protect your data and access to your company's applications is something that needs to be dealt with. And so that also is a big consideration. This is a big one. Digital transformation promises to increase the customer experience, right? We all, as companies, whether you're a nonprofit, a government, we all want happy customers, right? And digital transformation actually promises to improve the customer experience. And in fact, close to 70% of the executives on this survey said this is one of the main reasons they're adopting digital technology. They want to improve their customer experience. I recently went to I just moved actually from Memphis to Atlanta, and I had to get a new driver's license this week. And you hear all the horror stories that the customer experience getting your new driver's license usually is not a very good experience, right? It's long waits and just no transparency, visibility when your ticket's coming up. But this one was actually quite well, and they were quite digital, and it really was a seamless experience. So a lot of agencies, a lot of companies, organizations are getting digital. They're automating something that's very manually intensive process and trying to digitize it, simplify it, automate it. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And then the other kind of promise from digital transformation is increasing your revenue. One easy example to think of is a lot of companies, since COVID particularly, have offered e-commerce, right? They now sell their products or their services online via their website. So that's what we're talking about. Digital provides that as a new source of revenue model, is to sell your goods online. There's many others, but we do not have time to go through those. Let's kind of just skip that. This is just a kind of shameless plug for ATA, company I work for and lead. Is we have a team of about 25 people who are these data scientists, these software developers and hardware folks, doing all this cool stuff to help create value for our clients. All right, that was a lot, really, really fast. So we're gonna go through one more TED Talk if we have time. This is something, I don't know if any of you read the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. The abbreviation is 4DX. And 4DX is as simple as, why do most strategies of any company, any government, any organization, why do 70% plus of strategies, goals, die on the vine, right? Why is that, right? They're good goals, they're great goals, but why is it that the majority, the supermajority of strategies and goals of companies die on the vine? Well, guess what? This book has kind of cracked the nut, has solved the code, and we're going to talk about it. Which is more challenging, right? Is it developing a good strategy, or is it executing the good strategy? Executing the strategy, right? Well, it's the execution part. That's the hard work. It may be hard developing a good strategy, but there's a way to do it. There's a lot of frameworks and methodologies. And guess what? In MBA school, they teach strategy, how to develop a strategy. What are the good strategies? What works? What doesn't? What they don't teach in MBA school is how to execute a strategy, right? How to get that free. So that, because it's more art sciencey, it's not, there's, it hadn't really been figured out. And so they kind of avoided it, right? So that's what we're going to talk about, is how do you execute that strategy, that goal, so it doesn't die on the vine, all right? So this book, this study, which was like Franklin Covey has their hands in it, they noticed that 65% of initiatives, of strategies, of goals require significant behavior change. And we all know behavior change is not easy, just with ourselves. If we're trying to diet, let alone to, New Year's resolutions, right? But let alone a whole army of people. So this wasn't maybe an aha moment, but let's just go with that. So what are some further root causes that they found that these goals died on the vine, right? They did not get executed. One, they found there was a lack of clarity. That's to not a big surprise. Another one was a lack of commitment. The employees they interviewed, surveyed, management teams, middle market, they weren't really that interested in the goal, the strategy, the vision, right? And then the lack of accountability. People weren't held accountable. They didn't know what they had to do and how they could help the company achieve the goal, the strategy. So that was another kind of reason they found. And then more. We're not going to go into the lack of trust, compensation type motivation things, and poor decision making, all that. But guess what? These, they found out, were all symptoms. These were not the root cause of why 70% or more of strategies, of goals, die on the vine. So here's what they found out. And it's a whirlwind, right? Like a tornado. Let's unpack it. This whirlwind is the number one cause. It's the number one enemy, and it's the day job. It's people's day job where they have clients, calling them, they have emails, they have meetings, they have deadlines, they're putting out fire. They don't have time to go work on the strategy. They don't have time to go work on the goal, right? Put some fertilizer and water on the fruit they're trying to harvest. And both, here's kind of unpacking a bit deeper. Both are important for companies, for organizations, for agencies to move forward. You've got to do the day job, the whirlwind, that pays the bills, that keeps the lights on. So that's important, that's urgent. But goals, the wildly important goals, are equally important, and you need to act upon them. And you need to not just write them, create them on a piece of paper, a business plan, and then put it on the shelf. So this is kind of what we're talking about. We can all relate to it. Here's a great picture of that just captures the day job, right? This teacher, it's like they're trying to tell her about the goal or the strategy, and she's just like, are you kidding me? Right? I don't have time to work on the school's goals or some initiative. I'm dying with my day job, all these, homework to grade or whatever she's doing. And so this is kind of what we're dealing with, the day job. It's the number one enemy, why strategies die on the vine, okay? But guess what? There's good news. There is a science I'm going to do really, really quickly because I think I only have 5 or 10 more minutes to help unpack how do we crack this nut? How can we tell our clients or our companies, our agencies, hey, I have kind of some secret sauce to help us achieve our goal, right? Achieve our strategy, right? Here's part of the things they found out, that most of the people, remember that teacher, they were spending 95%, if not 99% on their day job, because that's important, and attending to the emails, the meetings, the phone calls, the deadline, and only about 5% or less on the goals. Here's the ideal time frame. This isn't rocket science, kind of the 80-20, right? The Pareto rule, that we need to spend about 20% on these goals, on these strategies, right? And there's a lot of things we're doing in the day job, the whirlwind, that are inefficient. And it's kind of what's the stop list, but we don't have time to unpack that. So Now that we know the root cause is the day job, right? We know that that is our number one enemy that companies, organizations, agencies, and you can even think of what goals the Rotary Club has over the past couple years, 5 years. Again, it applies to everyone. It's a principle. What goals or initiatives have you guys had that just kind of went away and just kind of died a slow death? That's kind of what we're talking about. So the science says 70% plus do die in the vine, but how can we prevent this? And that's what we're going to unpack, cracking the code. So there's 4 disciplines that need to be executed. We're going to unpack these really quick. If you apply these, not 1, not 2, not 3, but all 4, the science has proven, you will achieve your fruit, your goal, your strategy, your vision, right? You will reap the rewards of that. So the first one, before we get that, and these are principles, mind you, these disciplines are principle based, kind of like gravity, right? Gravity it's a principle based, and so it's timeless. It's so even if you don't agree with these principles, these disciplines, they apply whether you like them or not, or understand them or not. So that's just so the first one is focus on the wildly important. This isn't rocket science. If any of you guys have studied this in your jobs or companies, the less is more, right? Focus, right? So the science has showed, all the studies they did for thousands of companies, if you have 1, 2, or 3 goals, your likelihood, if you focus on it, of achieving it is pretty strong. But the extent you get to like 4 to 10 range of goals, you're only likely to execute 1 to 2 of those with excellence. And then when you have more than 10 goals, just forget it. It's people just have no focus, and the day job is going to suck them in. So focus is key. Steve Jobs, I love this, right? Our Apple guy, he said, focus is not about saying no necessarily. He says, focus, let me just read this. People think focus means saying yes to the things that you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 of other good ideas that are out there. I'm sorry, I misread the top line. Focus is about saying no. So it's saying no to not only good ideas, it's also saying no to great ideas. And that's hard to do because successful people want to do more, right? They want to do more than 1 or 2 wildly important goals, but you can only do 1 or 2 at a time. And here's a great example. This was maybe a few years old, but Apple had about 100 stock keeping units at the time, right? As far as different products. Hewlett Packard, HP, had over 15,000. I looked at their market cap recently, a couple months ago. Apple is over $2 trillion. I think it's the world's largest market cap, publicly held company in the world now. Hewlett Packard, 30 billion, right? And again, remember, less is more. This is just an illustration of that. So with the first principle, only have 1 or 2 wildly important goals. The next one is act on lead measures. What exactly is you need to understand a lead measure, you need to understand what a lag measure is. A lag measure, kind of think KPIs, key performance measures. Lag measure it measures the goal. You have a revenue goal or increase membership, by 10%, or revenue by 10%, or increase your market share, increase customer satisfaction, and so on. Those are pretty common, but those are what we call lag measures, because when you measure them, it's looking in the rearview mirror. Hey, did we make our monthly sales? Did we make our quarterly sales? There's nothing you can do about it. It's done. It's over with, and you just pray that you made it when you look at the report. Lead measures, here's the money. This is the leverage, measures the behaviors that will drive and influence the goal. And so lead measures are both predictive and influenceable. That's a big word. All right, so let me explain it to kind of how this helped me get it. So a goal, let's say to lose weight, particularly after Christmas, we all want New Year's resolutions, right? To lose 10 pounds or whatever. Well, which is the lag measure, which is the lead measure? Is it to lose the number of pounds lost, 10 pounds, say? Or is it the number of calories per day? The lag measure is your goal, is your strategy. I want to lose 10 pounds. So you can get on the scale every day and check, but again, did I lose it or not? It's kind of based in the past. Whereas a lead measure, remember, it will predict whether you're going to meet the goal of losing 10 pounds if you measure the number of calories you consume each day. Another classic is, another lead measure, if your goal is to lose 10 pounds, you could measure how many minutes you spend exercising each day or how many glasses of water you drink a day. Those are lead measures. They help predict and influence if you're going to achieve your goal, your lag measure. So here's another one. A school was trying to increase their scores on their standardized test for reading comprehension. And so let me just kind of reveal it. The reading scores, when they took the test and saw what the scores were, that's kind of rear view mirror. It's history. That's the lag measure. But if they were to have said, you know, the next 30 days, we want to increase our reading scores from our students, let's start measuring every day how many minutes they spend reading. And if we measure that lead measure, that will help predict whether and influence achieving the goal of increasing our reading scores by 5%, whatever the goal is. Going really fast. I know this is choppy, guys. We don't have time to go through that. So we're going to keep going. So you want to have 1 to 2 goals. You want focus, right? Focus is key for any company or any organization, 1 or 2 wildly important goals. You want to make sure you're capturing a lead measure, something that will help influence and predict the goal. And then you want to have a compelling scorecard. As you know, if you're ever at a park and you are watching, I don't know, some kids or youth or adults even playing, like, say, basketball, you can generally tell if they're keeping score or not, right? It will play differently when you're keeping score. There was this example, I think it was after Hurricane Katrina, not certain, but there was this high school in they went to watch the football game, but no one had really realized, or the fans that were packed, realized the scoreboard had fallen because of the winds, I guess the previous week or something. It was down. So there were all these fans in the bleachers, and the game was playing, but all you could hear is like the murmuring of conversation, people just talking. No one paying attention to the game because no one knew what the score was. No one knew how much time was left. No one knew what down they were at. And so people, when the score is being kept, it's kind of the message there. And so the takeaway with this is, with whatever your goal is, the company, the agency, the organization, create a scoreboard that is visual and you can instantly tell within, I think it's like a 5-second rule, are we winning or are we losing? And this scoreboard is for, it's a player scoreboard. It's for the employees, the manager. It's not for executive management, okay? And it will also show both the lag measure, right? We want to increase revenue 10%, membership by 10%, and what the lead measure is, a number of phone calls or, you know, email campaigns, whatever the lead measure is going to be to help influence the goal. And this gets updated regularly. So this is not probably, when you keep score, it creates greater intensity, right? Better teamwork, better shot selection, kind of on the defense side, more celebration, and of course, employee engagement. Right? So, and here's some examples of these compelling scoreboards that we are talking about. Cadence of accountability. I love this. Was this daughter, she was in, just got her driver's license, and she had a deal with her dad. The dad's, she wanted to use the family car. And the dad said, well, as long as you wash our car every Saturday morning, or every Saturday, we'll allow you to use the car, you know, to go on about. And so they did it for 2 Saturdays in a row, and she was accountable, and he checked in, it was all good. Well, the dad had to go out of town for 2 weeks, okay? And when he got back, he noticed the car was not clean. So he talked to the daughter and said, hey, Susie, what's up? Why isn't the car clean? And she said, well, are we still doing that, right? I didn't know we were still doing that, right? And so you can imagine on a one-on-one, daughter and dad, if the accountability can break down after 2 weeks, imagine with your team at your department at work, when you have more than 2 people, right? You have more people to be held accountable. And then imagine a whole company. If you had a company-wide goal, if there's no accountability, it breaks down. So part of the science, part of the principle, the fourth discipline to achieve that goal, to achieve that strategy, is a cadence of accountability, which they suggest is a weekly meeting. The meetings have to occur at least weekly, short, kind of like huddle calls or huddle meetings, stand-up meetings, you've heard of those. No more than 20 to 30 minutes, ideally no more than 20 minutes. And you literally go around the room and say what your commitments are, what your actions are for the next week. And the key is you can never talk about the day job, the whirlwind. You're not allowed to talk about that email, that client screaming, that deadline. That has to be outside of this, because this is all focused on the wildly important goal. So in wrapping up, guys, because that was really, really fast. The one or two goals is all about focus. We've kind of talked about that pretty extensively. Number two, be careful what your company, your organization measures from a KPI. Make sure it's also lead measures and not just lag measures, right? The lead measures are the sweet spot. Those are the ones that influence and predict. That's your leverage. So that's kind of a paradigm shift. That's a kind of a big takeaway. Number three, keep score, right? This is not just, it's a different kind of compelling scoreboard we talked about, but that's what keeps employees engaged. And there's all these consultants and companies trying to increase employee engagement, and this kind of helps them solve that. And then the last is accountability. How do we keep our team, how do we keep our employees accountable? And the science behind this book, the principle, is a weekly huddle call, okay, around your goal, your fruit. Here's the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution. If you've struggled with any organization you're involved with, any company or your own company, like why, our strategies, they kind of flavor the month, or things do tend to die on the vine, and why is that? Well, again, this science proves by thousands of companies worldwide that it works. That is, this last one is lean. You guys have probably heard of lean. It used to have its roots in lean manufacturing, but lean now is in every department, every company. And I'm just going to fast forward this to show you the 8. I love this. These are the 8 wastes. They've been tried and true. It's defects, and you can see each of the letters that start with the letter spells the word downtime, because downtime is like very inefficient, very wasteful, right? So defects, a defect you could have at Starbucks. You ask for regular coffee and they give you a decaf, right? Or they gave you cappuccino. Anything that's a wrong order or bad quality is a defect. Every company, every industry, every site. Overproducing, wait time. I talked about getting my driver's license in Georgia. My wait was actually minimal, so that was good. So they've been doing some digital transformation with waiting. Underutilizing talent. There's so much stuff that our employees have in their heads, but if we don't ask for it and try to extract it and engage them, it's kind of a waste though. And then the number of touches in a given process of a product or service, measuring that. And it goes on and on. Inventory, having overproduced inventory. Motion, unnecessary movement. They did a study where nurses in hospitals, they did a motion study and saw that they were walking like on average 8 miles a day, trying to get all the different supplies and the different patients. So there's lots of waste there, lots of process improvement you can do with motion, and then excess processing, doing more than the customer values. Those are the famous kind of 8 wastes of lean. If you're interested in lean, Six Sigma type concept. Again, we don't have time to get into that. All right, wow, that was, I verbally vomited on all of you, but what we talked about is digital transformation. It's it's more than $1 trillion market. Every company, every organization, agency is embracing automation, right? Embracing digital. Again, we talked about Wi-Fi. We talked about sensors. We talked about cloud and data analytics. Those are the 4 big drivers, the forces driving digital transformation. We talked about the 4 disciplines of execution. Why do 70 to 90% of strategies of good goals die on the vine? Because they don't have only one, focus. They don't have a lead measure. They don't have a compelling scorecard, a scoreboard, and they don't have a weekly accountability meeting. You do those 4 together, then you're going to achieve your goal. And then lean, we talked about these 8 wastes that spelled downtime, and you can Google that, but that is it. I'm going to stop.
Great job, Rick. Thank you. Any questions for Rick?
Rick, can you tell the story about the increase in the shoe sales? That's a great story.
All right. Well, if we have time, you're right. And I actually have a little bit more time than I thought. My appointment's closer than that. So let me go to that. This is a great story, Ron. I agree. All right, here we go, guys. This also, much like, and we're talking about lead measure. If you guys, the one takeaway you guys get from here is understanding what a lead measure is. You can add so much value to any company, organization, committee, agency that you're involved in. So we talked about a lead measure, like losing your weight. You want to measure your calories consumed per day or how many minutes you've exercised. Those we get personally. Those are lead. And we talked about the reading comprehend. Let's measure how much time they read. Here's another example. Okay. So these consultants went in and there was this department store, call it years and years ago. And overall, this department store was losing. I think their sales were down like 8 or 10% from year over year. And so these consultants came in and said, gosh, which department do we start in, right? There was maybe, a dozen different departments. They decided to start in the shoe department because they were really on the struggle bus. And so the consultants met with the shoe department manager and just try to get the lay of the land. And they talked and said, well, hey, tell us a little bit about, who's your best sales person, right, in your shoe department? And they said, oh, it's Sally. And they said, all right, well, tell me a little bit about Sally. And they said, oh, Sally, she just gets lost in the customer. She asks about the customer's family, how they're doing. She notices their new purses or spring clothes or whatever. And she just gets engaged and lost in the conversation with the customer. But more than that, when Sally goes to get the pair of shoes that the customer wants, Sally always brings back 3 extra pairs, right? So she brings 4 pairs of shoes and she comes back to the customer and says, here's your shoes. And oh, by the way, I found these that I think these would go great with your new purse. And by the way, I got these new shoes for your upcoming daughter's, wedding or whatever. And here I got these for upcoming spring, right? And so Sally has historically sold 3 times as much sales as the average shoe department, salesperson. And so that is what the shoe department decided to do. And that's a lead measure, right? Sally she didn't know it at the time, but Sally was bringing, and this, 3 extra pairs of shoes, suggestive selling, kind of retail 101, if you kind of get real here. But Sally a lead measure was bringing extra shoes that would help predict or help influence their goal of I think their goal was to increase sales by 2% was the goal for not only the shoe department, but overall store, rather than losing 8% sales to gain 2%. That was the goal, the lag measure. But the lead measure here they came up with, they said, well, let's make all of the shoe people have to not only bring the shoes that the customer wants, but you have to bring at least 2 extra pairs. And maybe it was 3, doesn't matter. But they have to do this suggestive selling. That's going to be our lead measure, okay? Everyone who wasn't used to doing that has to now bring 2 pairs for each customer. And that's going to be our lead measure. Our goal was to increase sales 2% in the shoe department. The lead measure is now we're going to bring 2 extra pairs of shoes to each customer. Our compelling scoreboard, they were keeping track behind the register of every time, you would mark that, yes, I brought the 2 extra pairs of shoes, and then each extra sale that they wrote. I think they even wrote a thank you letter and all this other stuff, but we won't get into those details. And then they, of course, had accountability, huddle meetings weekly, and they exceeded, I think maybe they had 4% sales after the year. But it's this type of suggestive selling, which isn't, a lot of these are simple. Developing the lead measure can take a while, but once you get it, you're like, wrote that on the back of a napkin, right? Bring in 2 more pairs of shoes. Or, measuring how many calories I consume. That makes sense. Oh yeah, actually measuring how many minutes I exercise, right? Or measuring how many minutes were read by your students. And you can do this with any student, measuring training of your employees from a safety thing, or, there's so many examples, but the key is, friends, what 99% of the time, companies just measure lag measures. Oh, we want to grow 2% in sales in the shoe department. So every day, every week, every month, they're running a sales report, praying that they grew 2%. And that's it. That's their KPI. Sales reports. No. Now let's add to that this lead measure. Let's measure, are each employee consistently always bringing 2 extra pairs of shoes per customer. And then it's just a numbers game, and it's going to influence and predict and assure you meet the goal. I'm going to pause there. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense, but there's a ton of these examples out there. It applies to every industry, every company, every department, every goal, every strategy. Hopefully that makes sense. But any other questions?
Anything else for Rick? Okay, well, Rick, I will surmise as a former sales guy before I went to the government, the drivers, what you're talking about, that's what it's about. It's not the results after, it's what drives that behavior. So fantastic. Appreciate it, Ron. Great job, Ron.